Every liter of petrol pumped at an Indian fuel station today contains exactly 20% domestically grown ethanol. The economic intuition here feels obvious. We import crude oil from halfway across the world, paying global market rates. We grow ethanol right here at home. Replacing a fifth of an imported fossil fuel with a domestic crop should make the final product cheaper. That intuition is entirely wrong. According to the government's own admissions, the ethanol being blended into your fuel tank actually costs about 26 rupees a liter more than the crude oil it replaces. The Petroleum Ministry notes that E20 only becomes economically viable to produce if global crude prices surge past $120 to $130 a barrel. Today, crude sits near $76 a barrel. The state is deliberately taking a highly expensive liquid and blending it into a cheaper one. This chart shows the exact cost breakdown of a single liter of E20 petrol in Delhi. The final price on the board is 102 rupees and 12 paise. E20 is a structural national insurance policy against global oil shocks, prioritized over the consumer's desire for a lower pump price. Deconstructing this 102 rupee liter reveals the hidden premiums paid for taxation, mileage loss, and agricultural distortion. Excise and VAT remove 28.50 rupees. Next, removing dealer and oil company margins takes 17.60 rupees, leaving the actual refining cost. Here, the disparity is glaring. A liter of imported crude costs 45.60 rupees, while the maize ethanol it gets blended with costs 71.86 rupees. Private distilleries cannot simply demand 71 rupees because they want to. Ethanol in India does not float on a free market. It operates on an administered price, fixed deliberately by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. This pricing system acts as an energy security ratchet. When global oil markets spike, the fixed price of domestic ethanol provides a ceiling, shielding the country from extreme volatility. The catch is that a ratchet only moves in one direction. It lacks a mechanism to drop. This graph tracks crude and ethanol prices over a recent 10-week window. You can see crude oil plummet by 37%. Directly above it, the administered ethanol price moves exactly 0%. In fact, ethanol procurement prices have never been cut. This means the consumer is paying a continuous, non-refundable insurance premium on a fifth of every liter they buy. Even when global oil is cheap, the price of the blend stays artificially high. Yet, 71 rupees is merely the visible cost of ethanol. The true economic cost is much higher, heavily obscured by the fact that 2/3 of India's ethanol program now runs on grain. To meet blending targets, the government allocates surplus rice from the Food Corporation of India. By the time you account for procurement, storage, and subsidized fertilizer, the state spends about 41 rupees to hold a single kilogram of this rice. This ledger maps the transaction. The state takes that rice, costing 41 rupees, and sells it to private distilleries for 23 rupees and 20 paise. The 17 rupee gap is a direct transfer from the exchequer to the distillery. Since it takes roughly 3 kilograms of rice to make 1 liter of ethanol, this injects a 50 rupee subsidy into every liter. That massive cost never appears on the fuel pump price board, and it is quietly excluded from calculations of foreign exchange savings. The economic distortion spreads outward to other crops. As distilleries pivoted to maize to meet the soaring ethanol demand, they bit the crop away from traditional buyers, driving maize prices up by 69% in just 4 years. At the same time, the leftover grain mash from these distilleries flooded the animal feed market. This excess cheap protein crushed the demand for soybean cake, pushing soybean prices below their legally mandated minimum support price. Then there is the water footprint. Depending on the crop mix, producing a single liter of E20 fuel consumes an estimated 1,100 liters of embedded water, largely pumped from regions where aquifers are already classified as overexploited. The true financial and environmental ledger of E20 is laundered through rural agriculture, state granaries, and depleting water tables long before it ever reaches a city fuel station. When E20 enters an engine, we have to account for the physics of combustion. Ethanol is an oxygen-rich molecule, but it inherently carries less energy per liter than pure petrol. Government lab tests cite a minimal drop in efficiency. However, widespread surveys of drivers with older cars consistently report a real-world mileage loss of between 3 and 10%. We translate this efficiency loss into mathematical cost. If your car loses 10% of its mileage, cost per kilometer rises. That math is identical to a hidden price hike, making the effective cost of that fuel 113 rupees and 50 paise. Ethanol also introduces a chemical vulnerability. It is hygroscopic. Unlike pure petrol, ethanol actively pulls moisture directly out of the surrounding air. In dormant or cold vehicles, if enough water is absorbed, the mixture undergoes phase separation. The ethanol and water detach from the petrol and sink to the absolute bottom of the tank, which is exactly where liquid is drawn directly into the fuel lines. This separated mixture accelerates the degradation of rubber hoses, gaskets, and O-rings, leading to premature mechanical wear inside the fuel system. The automotive industry solved this by upgrading vehicle materials, but that certification only applies to cars manufactured from April 2023 onward. This leaves roughly 300 million older vehicles on Indian roads completely uncertified for the fuel they are forced to consume. The physical limitations of E20 effectively levy an unprinted mechanical tax, paid in lost mileage and perished seals, directly onto the owners of India's older fleet. If you want to avoid ethanol entirely, there is exactly one domestic option, XP100, a premium zero ethanol fuel, but it costs a staggering 160 rupees a liter. It is easy to assume that removing ethanol makes fuel incredibly expensive, but 160 rupees is not the baseline cost of pure petrol. XP100's price is artificially inflated by the heavy refining costs required to reach 100 octane, combined with the extreme logistical expense of transporting tiny volumes. More importantly, XP100 acts as a deregulated release valve. When crude prices spike and the government freezes regular fuel prices to protect commuters, oil companies recoup their losses by drastically hiking the price of luxury, low-volume fuels like XP100. If standard 91-octane petrol without ethanol were permitted to be sold today, the actual cost at the pump would be roughly 98 rupees a liter. This chart compares Delhi's E20 price against pure, zero-ethanol petrol supplied by Indian refiners to Bhutan. If we strip away 28 rupees of Indian taxation, Delhi's price drops, aligning perfectly with the base market cost of Bhutanese fuel, around 56 rupees. India charges buyers in Nepal and Bhutan the exact same global market rate for the base molecules. The wild discrepancies you see at their local pumps are dictated entirely by the taxes levied by their own governments. The crucial detail here is the fuel specification itself. Bhutan's government explicitly declined E20 imports from India, specifically citing the same hygroscopic risks and engine performance issues in older cars that Indian drivers face. India does not subsidize foreign drivers at the expense of its own. The domestic price of E20 is high because the state leverages heavy taxation and a logistical monopoly to enforce an energy policy that its citizens cannot opt out of. None of this negates the macroeconomic success of the E20 program. By displacing imported crude, the mandate has successfully saved the country roughly 1.97 lakh crore rupees in foreign exchange. During the severe global crude crisis of April 2026, this domestic buffer acted as a vital shock absorber. While neighboring countries saw their fuel prices spike by up to 40%, India's domestic fuel prices remained remarkably stable. We are left with two distinct ledgers. On one side, the state successfully secures forex savings and geopolitical price stability. On the other side, the consumer absorbs engine mileage loss, rubber degradation, massive rice subsidies, and food inflation. This is the fundamental asymmetry of E20. The massive benefits accrue safely to the national government's balance sheet, while the costs accrue entirely to the daily commuter, the poultry farmer, and the local aquifer. E20 operates as a highly rational, functional insurance policy against global oil shocks. But true arithmetic demands transparency. If the public is expected to pay the premium for that insurance, they deserve to see it printed clearly on the pump.